Hi there, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, New SQL Server Technology for Peak Availability and Cost Control, brought to you by APON Innovative Solutions and DH2I. My name is Josh Oxmeyer, and I am going to be your moderator today. Today's webinar, we're just going to go through a short presentation and then have time for question and answer at the end. And before we get underway, I just need to cover a few logistical items. All attendees will remain on mute throughout the entire presentation, but you will always have the ability to ask questions using the GoToWebinar questions pane on your screen. And at the end of the presentation, we will run through as many questions as time allows for. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Connor Cox from DH2I.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it. And good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining. My name is Connor Cox. As Josh said, been with DH2I for about 5 years now, and really excited to talk about a different and innovative approach today for SQL Server high availability and cost savings. We are very excited to be partnered with APON. They are DH2I's exclusive partner in India. They are great folks and have really great expertise in IT solutions. So definitely thrilled to be a part of that partnership. In terms of an agenda, first we're going to spend some time talking about some of the challenges that various organizations are facing. Just take a little bit of a look at what SQL Server environments are looking like today and issues that folks are running into, and then give an overview of the DH2I approach to dealing with those challenges, give you a little bit of information on how it works, but mostly talk about what it can get you. And then, as Josh said, leave some time for Q&A at the end. Please, if you have questions, ask them, use the GoToMeeting pane as I'm going through this. Excuse me, and then we can go ahead and answer those questions at the end of the session. So with that, let's get started. This is a depiction of what I can imagine a lot of your SQL Server environments look like. It really consists of just about everything out there. You've got SQL Server versions all over the map, all the way back to SQL 2005, some even SQL 2000, through the latest, 2014, 2016. Same with the operating system. You've got legacy, you've got new. So you've got this collection of different deployments out there dealing with legacy challenges as well as new deployments, and then various techniques to create high availability, whether that's clustering, whether that's virtualization. They all have their own challenges and they all have to be managed in similar ways. This has created an issue that we call operating system sprawl or SQL Server sprawl. How did we get here? Well, anytime a new application is deployed, it oftentimes needs its own instance of SQL Server. Each one of those instances in turn means spinning up a new machine. So whether that's a physical machine or a virtual machine, these boxes or machines, if you will, are just getting spun up very, very quickly. And so there are a lot of implications to cost and management overhead that your organizations are having to deal with because of this proliferation of servers. So first, let's talk about the bottom line. And that is Gartner, analyst firm. They've compiled this data that has both the cost and the growth of Windows Server OSs out there. So they have determined that the cost of a Windows Server operating system for 1 year is $5,700 US. Okay, so that consists of both hard costs and soft costs. But what that means is that every time we create a new operating system, we carry and take on that additional cost. So how do we get this under control? Well, one of the typical approaches is virtualization. So a lot of you folks out there doing virtualization for SQL Server. And so it's done a variety of great things. It's reduced the amount of hardware that we need to provision. It's cut power, cooling, floor space, etc. But now we actually have more operating systems because of those hypervisor machines. And it makes it very, very easy to spin up new machines and make this problem that we saw on the previous slide even worse, because now we can very, very easily create these new virtual machines. There's also what I like to call the Microsoft virtualization tax. Now, Microsoft really realized that people were doing virtualization for SQL Server, and they came up with a variety of ways to get more licensing revenue out of your budgets. And so they've done a couple of things. One is they've said, if you want to do unlimited virtualization, there is a requirement to do Enterprise Edition SQL Server licensing for every physical core in your environment. Also, by the way, there's an Enterprise Edition requirement of the operating system to do unlimited virtualization. So a high cost because of both a push to enterprise and licensing all of those underlying physical cores. If you want to do standard, there is a 4-core minimum per VM. So if you want to do per VM licensing, each VM has a minimum of 4 cores. That can also be very burdensome and can eat up a lot of your budget and makes Microsoft very happy. Their revenues are ever increasing. So some of you might be thinking, what about clustering? So this is an approach that does enable some level of consolidation in some ways. And so it's really great because it's built into the operating system. However, there are a lot of other complexities and issues that you run into by doing things this way. So what do I mean by that? Well, first, if you do clustering on standard edition of SQL Server, this only allows for a 2-node cluster. So typically what I see with these standard edition 2-node clusters is that they are active, one node is active and one node is standby or passive. So this is not a very good consolidation platform because you're only limited to 50% utilization on either node. You need enough capacity so that all of your workloads can fail over should one of those servers go down. So the answer to be able to improve utilization, is to make larger clusters. And so if you want to make larger clusters with Microsoft's clustering solution, you are forced to Enterprise Edition of SQL Server. Now, that particular software is 3.5 times the cost of standard edition. So there's a major cost to being able to do their large cluster solution. Now, with both standard and Enterprise Edition clustering, there are a couple of other drawbacks to be aware of. The first is troubleshooting. It's very difficult to troubleshoot. Management can be a pain. If you have different versions of SQL Server, they all need to have different clusters, and migrations can be difficult. You cannot manage existing workload with a Microsoft cluster. You have to migrate to it. So a couple of drawbacks here that we at DH2I have a solution to be able to avoid. A couple of other pressures that you are feeling in your IT organization. That is, you are being forced to provide high availability and disaster recovery for these deployments. So beyond just consolidation, how do I keep operations up at all times? Staying modern with the latest and greatest of the operating system versions and things like that is absolutely critical. And if they're not done, you can create security threats. And then performance. Just being up isn't enough. It needs to perform. And then these overall major budget pressures. So your IT organization is being more and more seen as a cost center. And Microsoft continues to change the rules to push you to more expensive licensing. So beyond that Enterprise Edition conversation we had before, they've moved from CPU to core licensing, and they're moving all of their customers to that new factor. Very, very expensive, and they're pushing you to software assurance to get mobility. So again, more of these traps that Microsoft is laying that we can avoid with our solution that we'll talk about in a moment. And there's just this overall idea that if you want higher availability, you are going to have to pay more for it. So how do we break that model? And so that's what we're here to talk about today, a product from DH2I called DxEnterprise. Now, this is a way to cut sprawl, reduce that trend of overwhelming sprawl problems, as well as get high availability and reduce your overall licensing spend with Microsoft. So we can avoid a lot of those traps while staying completely compliant. So Microsoft is notorious for running audits on their customers. This product is completely certified, and certified and does not break any of those Microsoft licensing rules. So let's talk a little bit about what it is. DxEnterprise is based on technology that is workload portability. So that is this idea of being able to move a SQL Server instance from one host to another host. Now, as part of this process, we can also maintain the same connection endpoint regardless of where the instance is active. So if it's on server A or server B, the connection string for the clients is the same. So we do this with what's called a vhost or virtual host. Okay, so because we can move those workloads around, like I said, we create a situation where our customers stack instances within machines. So you can see in this image here, we have one Windows Server OS with 8 SQL Server instances on it. Now, Microsoft allows us to stack up to 50 SQL Server instances per licensed OS without any additional licensing implications. So this software allows people to take advantage of that capability, and our customers are doing this. And what they do on average is about 8 to 15 SQL Server instances per operating system. So this has a couple of implications. One is that it means that there are fewer operating systems to manage. Your admins are not spending as much time doing operating system work, provisioning OSs, doing patching, updating, etc., because there are just simply fewer of them. But in addition to that, it has licensing implications. So how do we save money with this product? It's probably what you're wondering. Well, there's a couple of different things. One is that we allow you to create unlimited size clusters on any edition of SQL Server. So you are not forced to Enterprise Edition to get large clusters. So you can create a very large consolidation platform with high availability, all on standard edition of SQL Server. So this creates a situation where our customers are saving a lot of money because they're not having to buy Enterprise anymore. And then the second way that that folks save money is that they're able to stack instances. So as I said before, we unlock and enable that capability of installing multiple instances per host because we can move them around. But people are upping their utilization and then reducing the number of cores that they need to license for SQL Server or renew with software assurance. So smaller footprint, less to license. Okay, so we talked about moving instances manually, but what about high availability? So if we're stacking instances, we need a way to be able to protect them. If this server goes down, we need a high availability engine to move things around underneath it. So we also have that built into the product HA engine that will always ensure that your applications come up. This is a very high level of protection. This is a higher level of protection than virtualization alone. We can do this on physical or virtual machines, but this is SQL Server level HA. If there's any issues with the operating system, the binaries, any sort of configuration issues, even most pilot errors, this will self-heal around it and automatically take action, move your instances to where they can come up. As we said before, having an instance up is great, but it needs to perform. So we have quality of service controls that we can add to each and every one of our instances under management to ensure that it gets the resources that it needs. Disaster recovery, we can actually extend this framework to not only failover from host to host, but also from site to site. So the vast majority of our customers are using this to provide HA and disaster recovery capabilities. One of the greatest things about our product is that it's software, and because it's just software, it is completely infrastructure agnostic. As long as the underlying operating systems are running Windows Server 2008 R2 or newer, we can install this product on it. So this provides a lot of flexibility because you probably have a lot of different OSs out there. Well, wouldn't it be great if you could just add them all into the same cluster and manage them all from the same pane? Well, with this tool, you can. Same goes for SQL Server. We can do this all the way back to SQL Server 2005 through current, and even have different versions of SQL Server in the same cluster. So we can have a cluster with many different versions of SQL Server in it. And so our customers really like that because they have a little bit of everything, and now they've just got one big cluster to have to manage. So a lot of simplicity from a management perspective. Physical virtual cloud. If you are looking at doing this on premises, absolutely fine. If you're looking at a cloud solution, you want to use a managed service provider to do this, that's absolutely supported as well. So again, we don't care. But this has other implications that really go beyond just management, and that is modernization. So we can very, very simply modernize the operating system, the application version, and the underlying infrastructure very, very quickly, really just as fast as it takes to move the application instance, the SQL Server instance, from one host to another host. This results in a vast reduction in the amount of planned downtime in an environment. So a lot of times customers, the largest amount of downtime in their environment isn't actually disasters. It's planned outages, doing patching, doing updating, doing migrations. All of that is reduced to the lowest amount of downtime possible because of our ability to mix and match. I want to talk about agility a little bit. Whatever you and your organization are deploying today is going to become a legacy problem in the future. It's going to be old, and you're going to need to move off of it onto something new. And so because of our ability to just bring in whatever's new and start moving those instances onto it, you will never have to do migrations again, and you will have the greatest level of agility in your environment. So you might be wondering, how do we get there? What does that process look like? Well, one, you can actually install our tool on an existing workload. So an existing instance, existing servers, you can install our tool, manage the instance, and make it mobile between hosts and make it portable between hosts. However, if you want to migrate or move to a DxEnterprise environment, we have this tool that can help you to do that. So it's a very, very handy tool. It takes all of your SQL Server instance data and it restores it to a target instance. So that can be in your DxEnterprise cluster. So that tool is out there for you to be able to use. Not only is this product cost effective and very innovative for high availability, but it's also proven by customer validation. DH2I is a company that's been around since 2010, so we've been out this for a while. We have very, very large enterprise customers that are running this system. Financial services organizations like Manulife Financial, John Hancock here in the United States, they are a Global 500 organization running this product. and they're running their mission critical systems on it. Healthcare is a very large vertical for us as well, because they have a lot of SQL Server and it's also highly critical. Government is also represented here. We have manufacturing companies, we have retail organizations, food distribution, we have law offices that are using this. So really anyone with SQL Server, whether it's a large environment and or a critical environment, we can absolutely help. Go through a quick summary of what we've covered here, and then we can take some questions. This product is really going to give you the most lightweight HA framework that you can deploy, because it really it provides built-in HA, but also that ability to reduce downtime for planned outages. A major consolidation platform, so shrink down your footprint to have fewer OSs to license, fewer to have to manage, for a result in typically 30 to 60% reduction in SQL Server spend. Very, very simple. We don't have time to show you a demo today, but it is incredibly easy to install. It takes 6 clicks to install, and I can go from having a standalone instance to highly available clustered instance with DxEnterprise in a matter of minutes. So very, very simple to set up and install. And then agility, right? It's all about agility. So ensuring that you're never having to spend major times doing rip and replace migrations. You can just bring in what's new and start moving these instances over onto the new platform. Let's see. So we were back in 2015 named a Gartner CoolVendor. So that is certainly a major accolade from that analyst firm. If you do want more information, go ahead and send me an email, connor.cox@dh2i.com. Certainly encourage you to, if this is a good next step for you, to get a deep dive demo. So we can schedule some time, you can gather your teams, and someone from our side can just walk you through the product. We can show you all the bells and whistles, and it really all comes together once you see this thing. So certainly hit that URL if you're interested in the demo. And then we also do trials. If you just want to check this out yourself, download some software, play with it. Like I said, very easy to install. You can visit that URL there as well. If you don't have systems to be able to do testing on, that's fine. We have our own sandbox lab that we can get you access to. So just let us know if that's of interest, and we can get you in our lab typically within a few days. So thank you all for joining. Really appreciate you taking some time, and want to open it up for questions now. So Josh, looks like there's some questions coming in already.
All right. Thank you for the presentation, Connor. And yeah, thank you everyone for sticking around for the whole presentation and also asking some great questions. Hopefully you've started to, achieve a good understanding of the cost savings, consolidation, manageability, and availability benefits that you can get from DxEnterprise. And also, yeah, keep in mind that a demo or a free trial are both great next steps. But I'm going to go ahead and jump into this list of questions, and feel free to ask more questions as we progress through Q&A time. So Connor, the first question we have here is, what kind of performance impact does DxEnterprise have?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the answer is it's very, very little. So our product consists of just 5 Windows services. It is not in the data path whatsoever, and it is just an application, so it's all in application space. We are not in the kernel, and so really it's a very, very lightweight tool.
All right, thanks, Connor. Next question we have here is, for high availability in a virtualized environment, what's the point of using DxEnterprise instead of VM Mobility?
Excellent question. So certainly want to start by acknowledging the fact that we can run this on bare metal physical machines, but it also runs nicely on virtualized infrastructure. So about half of our customers run this on VMware or Hyper-V. So certainly keep that in mind. But VM Mobility, it's really great when you have issues with infrastructure. If you have a box that goes down, then VM Mobility will help you with that. It's not very helpful, however, if you have an issue with the VM. So if you have a VM that has a blue screen, vMotion isn't necessarily going to help you with that. So we provide that higher level of abstraction to actually protect SQL Server rather than just protecting a VM. In addition to that, we can do patch management and help eliminate planned downtime for guest updates. So if you have a guest OS that needs an update or an upgrade, and you are not using DxEnterprise, that is going to cause a lengthy outage. You're going to have to actually take down that system. With DxEnterprise, you can actually just move the instances off of that guest, do the work on that guest, and then move the instances back on it. So very, very higher, it's a much higher level of protection than virtualization alone, but they do play nicely together.
All right, thank you, Connor. And everyone, just want to remind you that you can continue to ask questions in the questions pane. There's a few more coming in. We'll try and get through as many as we can. So the next one we have here is, how many instances am I allowed to stack on a single host?
Sure. So Microsoft allows you to install up to 50, so 50 SQL Server instances per server. That is inclusive of both active and inactive instances, by the way. Your results will certainly vary on the stacking that you're able to achieve. We do have some customers that are actually running up against that Microsoft limit. They've got 50 instances installed on each node, and we have others that are just stacking a few instances on some smaller machines. So it's going to depend on how large your instances are, your infrastructure. But what I will say is we typically see stacking of around 8 to 15 instances per server.
All right, thanks, Connor. And next, how does DxEnterprise license?
So DxEnterprise is licensed per core. And so what you will want to do is just look at all of the cores in the environment that would be under DxEnterprise management. And that is how we license. It's a lot like how SQL Server is licensed. But definitely when you're looking at that, think about a situation where you have also done some consolidation. So it's likely that your footprint would be much smaller than your existing SQL Server footprint.
All right, I'm going to try and squeeze in one more quick question. How does DxEnterprise affect Microsoft support?
Great question. So the answer is it really doesn't change Microsoft support. We have done certifications, Microsoft certifications for our product on their platforms for both the operating system and for SQL Server. So they're fully certified. But we also do have a very unique capability of being able to freeze a SQL Server, what we call freeze a server. So we can freeze a node and we can actually uninstall our product and run the test again. So it makes it very nice to be able to troubleshoot if Microsoft says, well, can you replicate the problem without DxEnterprise? You can do so very easily. You can just freeze the node, uninstall us. Now high availability will be turned off, but you can run the test again and prove to them that it is either our problem or not. So freeze, uninstall makes things very nice to be able to do that level of troubleshooting.
Okay, thank you very much, Connor. And thank you again, everyone, for the questions you asked and for sticking around for the whole presentation. There are a few questions we didn't have time to get to, But I assure you that either a representative from DH2I or our good friends over at APON Innovative Solutions will get back to you with a personal email to make sure all your questions are answered. And just remember to keep in mind that you can reach out to info@dh2i.com with any questions you have, or also hit our website to request a demo or free trial. But that concludes our presentation today, everyone. Thank you very much for attending, and have a good rest of your Friday.